So I've been making some progress on this project. I'm running through this tutorial called Kubernetes the Hard Way, where you kind of bootstrap your own Kubernetes cluster from scratch. I'm doing it in Google Cloud, and I'm using an agentic coding assistant to help me write the code and kind of debug things. Recently, I've been working through this part of the tutorial where you have to provision a certificate authority and generate TLS certificate. And in this tutorial, we're going to use our own K8s configuration and use OpenSSL to generate certificates uh, and keys. And this is important for Kubernetes to establish something called public key infrastructure. This is something that's all over the internet. So like if you go to a website, it says HTTPS, that's part of public key infrastructure where it uses TLS certificates, which are um, distributed through some sort of public certificate authority. And that's necessary to encrypt traffic and to authenticate to within a Kubernetes cluster for the different components to authenticate to each other. So you can't just, do like a man in the middle attack. So it's an important part of Kubernetes infrastructure, network infrastructure, and it's a part of the tutorial. What I've been working on in this tutorial is my version of this is the Kubernetes the sort of hard way. And so I'm using Terraform to establish a template, a base template that I can destroy and spin up whenever I want. And I can, when I'm done like tinkering with it, I can tear it down so I don't get charged for these VMs. I'm using very small VM sizes, but I don't, really want to spend money that I don't need to. So I've configured the Terraform configuration to do the same thing that Kelsey's doing in his tutorial, but add a little bit of automation to it. So we configure our SSH keys in our jump box, and then we have this CA TLS script, which is going to do exactly what Kelsey's defined in the tutorial, but in a scripted way that I can SSH in and then run the script. And I have another script which takes the IP, because every time I tear down my infrastructure and then redeploy it, I'm going to have a new public IP. So this grabs that from Terraform output and then allows me to use SSH agent forwarding, so I don't copy my private key into the VMs to SSH into my jump box, and then from there I can SSH into my controller and worker nodes. Yeah, so I've been doing this with Claude Code. Claude Code's cool. You can, once you have it installed, you can invoke it with Claude and it opens up the Claude Code UI. If you're kind of skittish about giving an agent access to your personal machine, I don't blame you. So there's another way to do this, and these config files are provided in the Claude repo. So there's a Docker file and a dev container file. So you can run a dev container in VS Code. I've made some customizations to this to include Terraform and disable some firewall that they have so that you can prevent the agent from accessing any API endpoints other than the Claude API. So you can really lock it down and feel free to experiment with it. If you want to go that way, use their configs. You can run it in a container. It can access, your files on your machine, and you can mount a volume like what I've done, and so it can work with this code and go crazy, and you won't mess up anything except for the files in your repo code, and it won't be able to access the internet either. This container is running already here, and so we should be able to exec into that container, and so now we're in the container. Right, so this is a totally different OS from my machine. We have we're in our workspace directory, so we've got a Claude and MD and our README, and then we've got our infra directory with all our Terraform code. And so I can invoke Claude here, and I can go over like the history of the things I've asked it and review, kind of what we've worked on and make sure it has the right context to do the next thing I want it to do. And so these agents are kind of stupid in a way. They don't understand really simple things, but then they can do like crazy stuff. I asked it to generate a step to validate that the TLS certificates were created and distributed properly. And so if I want to SSH into my jump box, I have the script I can call. I can SSH as root into my jump box. And then because we've set up our host names, I can SSH into my controller node and my worker nodes as well. And so right now, Claude Code is thinking, depending on the complexity of the task, it might take a while to think, or if you ask it to perform certain actions, it'll work through those actions. So we can see it's able to generate these commands really quickly to help me validate um, that I have all of my certificates and keys created in my jump box. Um, and then, it gets scripts to check each key is that it's valid. And so this is really cool. I could even actually, if I had this running on my machine, use SSH forwarding and have the actual agent SSH into my VMs and do all this for me and just report back to me. So yeah, it's really crazy how productive you can be with this. And this is just kind of the beginning. So there's a lot more exploration for me to do. I'm both kind of bummed and excited at the same time, if that makes sense, because this this thing is doing my job. Um, so it kind of frightens me for the future of programmers or like any kind of knowledge worker. Like how are we going to use these tools? Are we going to just replace people and lay them off and say good luck? Or are we going to try to integrate them into society where people can benefit from productivity gains and everybody benefits instead of just a small few people that own most of the capital? It's kind of almost like a new industrial revolution. Uh, but anyway, it's really fun to work with, and I think I've been reading about agents. I think I'll make a video soon about how agents work, the planning, the reflection, and all the different components of an agent workflow. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that, and thanks for watching.